In this video, I want to talk about the law of demand, and some of the issues that are somewhat confusing, somewhat problematic for new students of economics. First of all, in a nutshell, the law of demand tells us that as the price of a good goes up, the quantity demanded for that good will go down. Or another way of saying that is the price of a good goes down as the price decreases, as the good becomes cheaper. Quantity demanded, or the quantity consumed, will rise. So in other words, the law of demand is expressing an inverse or a negative relationship. Now let's remind ourselves about what demand is. Demand is a relationship. It is the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity of the good that consumers are willing and able to buy. Now you'll notice a few things that stand out about this definition. First of all, demand is a relationship. So in order to express demand, in order to visualize demand, we have to use either a table or a schedule. We could use a graph, that's usually called the demand curve, or we could use a mathematical equation to express the demand relationship. But you can't express demand with simply a number. It has to be either in a table, a graph, or an equation form. The second thing we notice is that demand is a relationship between price and the quantity of the good consumers are willing and able to buy. That quantity is sometimes referred to as the quantity demanded. Quantity demanded, the quantity that consumers are willing and able to buy. And you'll notice that in order for demand to exist, that consumers must be willing and able to buy. So when we talk about the ability to buy, able to buy, we mean that the consumer has the resources, the income that's necessary to afford the product. When we talk about the willingness to buy, we're saying that the individual has preferences or the desire to purchase this product. So to give you a quick example, I do not have a demand for a Ferrari sports car. I'd love to have one, but I do not have the ability. I do not have the resources to afford a Ferrari sports car. Similarly, I do not have a demand for Taco Bell tacos. And the reason is because I don't like Taco Bell tacos. I don't have a willingness to buy Taco Bell tacos. I have the ability, but I don't have the willingness. And so neither of these goods, Ferraris and tacos, neither of these goods are goods for which I have a demand for. So to state the law of demand more formally, the law of demand states that as the price of a good rises, quantity demanded falls, or we could say it this way, as the price of a good falls, quantity demanded rises, ceteris paribus, and that is simply a term that means all else equal, holding everything else constant, ceteris paribus. Another way of expressing the law of demand is simply to say that demand is an inverse or a negative relationship. Whenever I think of a negative relationship, I think of a seesaw. As one side goes up, the other goes down. So once again, the law of demand says that as price goes up, quantity demanded will go down, and then conversely, if price goes down, quantity demanded will rise. Let's take a look at an example here. We have an example of a demand table or a demand schedule. And we might say this is the demand for pizza. And we see that at $7, consumers are not willing and able to buy pizza. As the price falls, however, as we see the price fall 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, quantity demanded rises. We can plot these points that are represented on the demand schedule. We can plot them in a graph. Whenever we create a graph, the first thing we always want to do is to label our axes. So traditionally, a demand curve, we have price on the vertical axis or the y-axis, and then quantity demanded on the x-axis, the horizontal axis. And I'm just going to label each block, and this will be in hundreds of units, 100, 200, 300, and so forth. And then price is $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, and $7. And I'll start with the first, or the lowest price first. We call that scenario A. In scenario A, the price is $1 and quantity demanded is 600, so that would be about right here on our graph. That's scenario A. Scenario B, $2 and a quantity of 500. And plotting the others, C, D, E, F, and G. Plot those points. Of course, again, it's $7. Scenario G, quantity demanded is 0. C, D, E, and F. And my favorite part is always the part where we connect the dots. And we have a nice wiggly demand curve. Demand curve. And so we can very easily transform, again, our demand schedule into a demand curve. And you'll notice in both cases we see this inverse relationship, this negative relationship. The demand curve has a negative slope. It's sloping downward. And again, we see that seesaw effect in our demand schedule. One thing before we leave this particular slide here, as the price of our good rises, quantity demanded falls. And the reason is two things happen. When the price of a good rises, our ability to buy that good decreases. We call that the income effect. Our purchasing power falls. As the price of a good rises, our income, our resources won't go as far, and so our ability to buy that good decreases. Similarly, when the price of a good rises, our willingness to buy that good diminishes. If the price of pizza goes up, then we're going to shift towards relatively less expensive alternatives like hamburgers, fried chicken, take your pick, other goods that are relatively less expensive now. That's called the substitution effect. So these two, the income effect, the substitution effect, generate what we call the law of demand. Finally, we can interpret any point on a demand curve at least two ways. I've selected here a price of $4 and a quantity demanded of 300. We can interpret this point two different ways. We could say at a price of $4, consumers are willing and able to buy 300 units. That's consistent with the law of demand and the way we usually express the demand relationship. Another way to interpret this point is in terms of the demand price. That is to say that the maximum price consumers are willing and able to pay for 300 units is $4. That $4 is what we call the consumer's demand price, the highest price they are willing and able to pay. We can even look at this point from the standpoint of the firm that produces this good, say the pizza parlor that produces this pizza. If you were the owner of the pizza parlor, your interpretation of this point would be that in order to sell 300 units, in order to sell 300 slices of pizza, you would have to charge a price of $4 per slice. That's the maximum price that consumers are willing and able to pay for those 300 units. So hopefully this has clarified some of the issues regarding demand and regarding the law of demand.